VETtalk video and podcasts are proudly supported by the Animal Referral Hospital.
This week.
Stand by to learn some cool new tongue twisters.
It's recently been shown that Allura strongylus abstrusus is the most common lungworm, but we're starting to see worldwide some other lesser lungworms pop up. There's one called Troglus strongylus.
They sound pretty easy to pronounce, don't they?
Yeah, dare you to do it.
And if you really love your cat, then make sure you listen to that story for your chance to win one of 5 packets of Advocate, helping to protect cats against all kinds of nasties.
Plus, vets tell us to avoid making our dogs overweight, but can they be too thin?
People stop you in the street and say, why is that dog so thin? And you say, well, it's not. It's actually all in the muscle. But there are some animals who will just mentally set their weight light.
I wish I could do that.
Me too. Also this week, Australia suddenly got hotter. Very, very hot, which is potentially deadly for people and for pets. So if heat or flame strike your pets, what to do?
One thing to keep in mind is that particularly with those injuries that are on their feet, that's just going to be painful for them to get around. So keeping them as rested as you can and as calm until you can seek veterinary attention.
G'day, I'm Brian Pickering.
And I'm Kaye Browne.
All those stories and more right here on Vet Talk, with our latest podcast available every Saturday on vettalkradio.com.au. And as we say every week, it's also available free in the iTunes store.
And thank you for your feedback. We're loving hearing that you're loving hearing us.
Absolutely. Well, let's get on with our first story.
In recent times, we've been alerted to yet another parasite that really goes under the radar and often gets missed, particularly in cats. We hear cats coughing and we laugh and we say, oh, furballs, but it could be something more sinister. So to find out, we're joined by Professor Vanessa, who's a feline medical specialist. Thank you for agreeing to tell us a bit more about lungworms.
Oh, that's my pleasure.
So what are lungworms exactly?
Well, they're just as their name suggests, they're parasites that live and breed in the lungs of cats, and they have a life cycle that goes through slugs and snails. So cats pick up the infection from the environment, either from eating slugs or snails or from eating things like rats or lizards that have eaten the slugs and snails, and that's how they get infected.
They often like those little bugs and things. Is it life-threatening?
It can be. It's most life-threatening in very young kittens and also in older cats that have a weakened immune system. So some cats can be infected and not show any clinical signs at all, but if they are affected, they can actually die from the infection, and they can have very high worm burdens in the lungs that can cause physical obstructions, and you can imagine in a small kitten with smaller airways, that's going to be a bigger problem.
Well, I had seen a survey that said that because it isn't as common as the other worms, that perhaps something as few as 16% of vets actually feel confident diagnosing it. How do you test for lungworms?
The easiest way to test for it is to do something called a Behrman fecal examination, and what it involves is actually detecting the larvae. So the adult lungworms live in the lungs, and when they mate and lay eggs, the eggs then hatch into larvae, which are coughed up and swallowed by the cat and shed in the stool. So you can detect those larvae in the stool by something called a Behrman technique, and it's very simple to do in practice, but it does take 24 hours. So basically the way that I do it in my vet clinic is to get one of those plastic wine glasses with the stem, the hollow stem, and fill it with some warm water, get a little bit of cat feces and suspend it in a gauze swab in the water, and then 24 hours later you just take a pipette and suction out what's sunk to the bottom of that wine glass stem. Have a look on the microscope. Make sure no one drinks it.
You could just about write a book about that. It sounds like a recipe of some kind.
So, I've got some great pictures. I'll be happy to share them.
Yeah, please do.
And how do you treat them then once you've discovered that the kitten or the cat has it?
Yes, there has been some great advances in treatment of lungworm in cats, and there are now a number of registered products available that can be given as a topical spot-on, and they're highly effective at treating lungworm. Some cats also need some other treatments as well, like antibiotics if they've got secondary infections, and that's where your vet would give you, tailored advice as to what to do.
You say a spot-on. Now, not being an expert at all in any of this. How does the spot-on work? I would have thought it'd be something you'd give a cat to actually ingest, so it does something inside. But how does the spot-on work?
Yeah, so there's great technology available in these new spot-on flea and worm control preparations that actually are absorbed into the blood and achieve very high drug concentrations in the blood. They get to the lungs and they're very effective at killing the worms. But I guess I should stress there are a number of different spot-on preparations available, and it's only 2 in Australia that are licensed and effective in treating lungworm, so it's not the sort of thing where you can just pop down to the supermarket and pick something that says worm treatment. It has to be a specific type.
And this is the from the media release, and the reason we're doing this story is this is from Advocate, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Advocate is highly effective at treating lungworm. And in fact, there are 2 types of lungworm in cats, and, which is a little bit lesser known, and it will effectively treat both of those.
We've had cats from time to time, and, occasionally they'll go around and go, and you say, give up those ciggies, How do pet owners know when a cat's potentially got lungworm?
Anytime a cat is coughing or looks like it's hacking up a hairball, if it's a one-off thing and a hairball comes up, then it probably is just a hairball. But if owners notice that there's sort of this funny coughing noise, or what they think might even be vomiting, it's always a good idea to just take a note of how frequently it's happening. Maybe take a video and show your vet, because it's really easy to mix up coughing with vomiting, and a video can really help with that.
Well, I guess bottom line, it would be easier if it could just be prevented. Does that product actually prevent them getting the lungworm in the first place?
It's highly likely that it will if it's given monthly, yes.
Fantastic. Now, you have a particular interest in lungworms. What sort of study is it that you're just embarking on?
Yeah, so we're actually looking at how common lungworm is in Australia, and we're also looking at the species of lungworm. It's recently been shown that Allura strongylus abstrusus is the most common lungworm, but we're starting to see worldwide some other lesser lungworms pop up. There's one called Troglus strongylus.
I'm glad you announced those.
It's a great name. And we really don't know much about that in Australia, so we've just started that project. We've recently collected some fecal samples from a shelter, and we found that 25% of the fecal samples that we tested were in fact positive for lungworm.
Wow.
And that just sort of shows you that, lungworm is here in Australia, and it's something to have on the radar when we're, thinking about coughing cats.
I can just imagine you at a party. Oh, hi, Vanessa, pleased to meet you. What do you do? Oh, I study lungworms.
I know.
Party. Well, at least then, it's no trouble picking up some of those little plastic wine glasses that you need so much.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can dogs get it too?
Now that is a great question. So, in Europe at the moment, there is a bit of an emerging lungworm disease that's caused by a lungworm called Angiostrongylus vasorum. That lungworm has not yet been detected in Australia, but that's also an area that we're researching, because Australia has the right environmental conditions for this lungworm to emerge, and it's just something that we really need to carefully monitor for. But it is not present in Australia at the moment, which is good news.
That's great news. Thank you once again, and we'll look forward to having you back on the show again soon.
Yeah, that's my pleasure. Thank you.
And that was Professor Vanessa Bars, internationally renowned as a feline medicine specialist. I can just see some cats in the future being named, what was it, Troglus Stroculus or something? I don't know.
Go on, have another go at the name. Okay, I'm not even going to embarrass myself like that.
But some really good tongue twisters there, and if you were going to a party, it'd be a great one to go to. Anyway, as we teased earlier, we have a little surprise for all you cat lovers. Giveaways. Yes, the good people at Bayer Animal Health want to keep as many cats safe as possible, and they've given us 5 packs of Advocate to give away to 5 lucky listeners. Now, Kaye, do you know what Advocate does?
Basically helps take care of fleas, heartworm, intestinal worms such as roundworm, hookworm, lungworm, ear mites, sarcoptic mange. Plus it also works on ferrets.
That's very good. I'm actually very impressed about that. Okay, to win one of these, all you have to do is answer this simple question. how often do cats need to be treated with Advocate to protect them from parasites? Alrighty. Now, to enter the competition, just go to our website, VETtalkradio.com.au, and click on the link to this giveaway. Alrighty. How often do cats need to be treated with Advocate to protect them from parasites? And to be fair, because some people listen through the week, we're going to give away 1 packet of Advocate every day for the next 5 days.
Yay! Good luck.
Good luck.
Are you embarrassed to take your dog out walking because they're too fat? Mm-hmm. Well, vets and nutritionists are always telling pet owners to slim down their loved ones. But what if your pet was deemed to be skinny? Can they ever be too skinny?
Well, to find out, we have Dr. Jo Sillince, CEO of Pets Australia, in the studio to help us out. Jo, thanks for joining us again. I look at farm dogs, working dogs. They're often very, very skinny. Is that a good thing?
Okay, the way we assess the condition of a dog is to condition score it. Okay, and a condition scoring, I use a condition score out of 5 because it's easy. And what you do is you feel over the ribs, and if there's a good covering over the ribs, but you can still readily feel the ribs, it's just almost not, you could almost see them, but you can't quite. And you can feel the tops of the spine as you run your fence, and the animal's got a bit of a waist in front of its legs, then it's probably in around about condition score 3, which we call perfect. A lot of farm dogs run a bit thinner than that. You can actually see their ribs, and you can sometimes even see the tops of their spines as you run your finger down. And those animals, you assess them based on muscle condition. And so what you often find is that they look like they're running thin around the ribs, but when you feel their muscles, they're really well muscled. Greyhounds often do that naturally. And that's a function of animals who are working dogs. They're working very hard. They don't carry a lot of fat, but they're clearly using the food that they're using in building muscle. So we would call that okay and not underweight. Yeah. If, on the other hand, you can start to see ribs and there's very little muscle, then yes, that animal is definitely underweight. Do you see the difference?
Yeah, okay.
And how do you put weight on dogs?
Look, for some dogs it's incredibly difficult, and for some reason poodles are slightly overrepresented in this group. If you feed a poodle to condition score 3, a lot of them will sit happily at condition score 2 if they're well muscled. And people stop you in the street and say, "Why is that dog so thin?" And you say, well, it's not. It's actually all in the muscle. But there are some animals who will just mentally set their weight light. And we know of a couple of dogs that do that. They're perfectly healthy. They're fed as much as they want to eat, anytime they want to eat. It's good quality food. But they just run condition score 2 permanently. And strangely enough, we've had some success in feeding up a couple of these lighter animals with, believe it or not, cheaper pet food.
Oh, really?
Actually increasing the grain content of their diet has actually helped because dogs are omnivores. They're not strict carnivores. So it's a matter of finding what works for that dog.
Well, thank you for joining us again, Jo. Dr. Jo Sillince, CEO of Pets Australia, with some pearls of wisdom, as always. And by the way, listeners, if people are telling you your dog's too skinny, but you know they're healthy, we would love to see a picture or a video. You don't need fancy gear, just use your mobile phone or some other device and then go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/VETtalk TV, and post it there. We'd love to see it. In a moment, we'll be speaking with Dr. Liz Thrift from Sydney's Animal Referral Hospital in Homebush about some of the things to do if your pet is ever involved in a bushfire or house fire, like those we've heard about this week in WA with people and pets losing their lives. Some of you may even remember the very popular video story we did about Molly the cat, who survived the horrific fires at Winmalee in the Blue Mountains thanks to the incredible team at ARH. Here's a short reminder of that story.
Hey, Molly. Are you licking your feet? Come on, darling. It's time to go home. Hey, sweetie. Hello. Oh, darling. Come on. We get a cuddle. Oh,
October 2013 saw some of Australia's worst bushfires ever. The fire front covered a huge area, including some of the worst damage to wildlife, family pets and private property that residents living in the Blue Mountains had ever experienced. But disasters often bring out the very best in people.
I wasn't sure what they could do for her because she was so burnt. Probably didn't realise till we came in and saw her just how burnt she was. I didn't see a lot of her on the day. David took her back up to the bedside. Yes, but she's done very well, and they've done an excellent job here with them. We're very grateful.
She came to us right at the end of October, so about 8 weeks ago now.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? It's an amazing story, and Molly certainly was one very lucky cat. And thanks to the amazing team at the Animal Referral Hospital who looked after her for, I might add, absolutely no charge, Molly survived. But right now on the line we have Dr. Liz Thrift, who's the Senior Medical Registrar from the Animal Referral Hospital's Internal Medicine Department. Hello and welcome to Vet Talk.
Thank you.
Liz, it is a problem with these bushfires around, and a lot of people, we're going to try and explain to people how to, I guess, be a little bit more prepared, but what are some of the things people should be aware of if their animals get injured or perhaps, succumb to smoke? Are there any sort of key things they should be looking out for?
There certainly are some key things that owners can watch for in their pets, and I guess the injuries that we see with animals in bushfire situations is what we see most acutely in an emergency. So the most common injuries that we see will be things like smoke inhalation, certainly burns, and so most commonly we see that on their paws, but they can sustain burns anywhere on their body. Then the less common, it's not an injury per se, but certainly you need to keep in mind with your pets that it's a chaotic time for everyone involved, and your pet probably does know that something's going on, and so they can feed off your anxiety and know that things aren't quite right. So you need to keep your pet in mind in those situations as well.
So stay calm. Stay calm.
Stay calm. That's definitely the first step, no matter what's going on. Whether it's an injury, is stay calm and think through your options.
I'm thinking about what would happen with kids and people listening who have kids and they have a burn, perhaps they've gone up against a barbecue or something like that rather than a bushfire. But, if you do think your pet has suffered a burn, what's the first thing people should do aside from planning to get to the emergency centre?
I think that seeking veterinary attention is going to be one of the standout priorities. I guess one thing to keep in mind is that particularly with those injuries that are on their feet, that's just going to be painful for them to get around. So just keeping in mind that they might not want to walk long distances, getting around the house or getting out to the yard is going to be painful. So keeping them as rested as you can and as calm as you can. Also in those dogs and cats that have smoke inhalation, you don't want them to be doing anything more than they have to, just focusing on their breathing, keeping them calm until you can seek veterinary attention.
Okay.
Obviously it's the first thing, but even things like air conditioning, does that help with smoke inhalation?
Anything that makes their breathing a little bit easier for them can certainly help. So keeping them away from smoky areas, air conditioning can help. If they're very hot, and in particularly in these bushfire areas, if there's really hot weather, being in a cooler environment can make things a little bit easier for them.
We don't mind admitting that when the temperature hits 40 degrees here, we actually bring our chooks inside. We bring them inside for the air conditioning, I should add, and they're actually in little crates. But there must come a time when dogs, cats, rabbits, whatever, that often live outside can succumb to heat stress. Is there any particular temperature or humidity level, or is it just, should we just use common sense?
Certainly, I think common sense is a really sensible first step. It does depend a little bit on the animal and also on the type. So, for example, if there are some dogs, for example, pugs, who have those very squished-in faces, their ability to compensate for really hot or humid conditions is going to be much different to, for example, a Labrador that has a nice big long nose. So it also depends a little bit on any other medical problems that your pet has. So, for example, in our older pets, pets that may have heart disease, for example, they probably aren't in a position where they can accommodate for those high temperatures as well. So certainly you want to keep your pets as calm and as cool as you can in temperatures like that. But you might find that if you've got one of those dogs or cats who has other illnesses or is a little bit older, that you need to pay really close attention to how they're handling the hot weather.
And, of course, we're coming up to holidays soon as well, and pets and kids and everyone's doing more stuff generally. Do you have some advice on perhaps the top 3 or 5 things that people should have as a basic little first aid kit for pets, dogs, cats, birds, whatever? Just little things that will help in the first instance before you get vet care.
Certainly, I think in the context of significant wounds, so particularly with the bushfires, is that if there is a significant open wound, then whatever you can do to try and cover that up, that could be something as simple as a bit of glad wrap, for example, around their limb, or even a bit of human bandage material, provided you don't apply it too tight, and all those sort of things to just reduce contamination, and also just to stop our pets from licking at their wounds. Often they think they're making things better, but unfortunately those rough tongues can do a bit of damage. So if you can protect those wounds, then that's going to be a good step until you can get your pet to the vet to assess them further. Try and avoid using a lot of human medications. Unfortunately, a lot of the drugs that we take as people aren't safe for dogs and cats. So do try and avoid, trying to medicate with your own medications. Although your heart's in the right place, unfortunately, it can make things a bit worse.
Exactly. Well, that's why you vets go through all those years of pain and anguish studying all this stuff.
And becoming specialists
and becoming specialists,
yeah.
Dr. Elizabeth Thrift, thank you very much for joining us on Vet Talk, and some great advice, and fingers crossed that we don't need to use any of the things that you've suggested here.
My pleasure, anytime.
That was Dr. Liz Thrift, who's the Senior Medical Registrar from the Animal Referral Hospital's Internal Medicine Department. And I'll tell you what, I got a couple of really, really good things out of that. What was the one about glad wrap on burns?
I love that. I hadn't thought about that before, but it makes sense, actually, rather than trying to put something on that will stick.
Cream or something or whatever,
because glad wrap, they can actually just cover the limb, and it would work on people too, I imagine.
And the other good advice, of course, was don't try any human medications or whatever, right? If you don't know something, just leave it alone.
Excellent. Dr. Liz is pretty cool, and she's steps away from being a specialist herself.
Okay, now it's time for all the latest pet and animal news from Australia and around the world with Kaye Browne.
Well, all eyes are on Paris at the moment, of course, and a French police dog named Diesel is the world's latest hero after she was killed in the Paris raid targeting the fourth cell of terrorists. Now, social media has been flooded with tributes for the 7-year-old Belgian shepherd who was leading a SWAT team into the flat and was killed when a female suicide bomber detonated an explosive vet attached to her body.
Oh, it was then I hadn't realised.
Yeah.
Oh,
so it's Diesel's action and launching herself at the terrorists that actually saved all those officers' lives, although, of course, we know that at least 5 of those policemen were injured. So, within hours, the hashtag Je suis chien, which is I am dog in French, was actually trending online, following along the lines of the Je suis Charlie, which was used worldwide in solidarity after the horrible Charlie Hebdo attacks earlier this year. Now, closer to home, a Melbourne family is urging pet owners to always try to phone ahead to their vet if their pet has been bitten by a snake and they're rushing to get emergency treatment. Sadly, the Lewis family didn't phone ahead after their dachshund was bitten by a tiger snake, and after making the dash to their vet, found the practice didn't have any anti-venom in stock. They're advised to go to the nearest emergency centre, but alas, 4-year-old Rosie died on the way. Now, the devastated family says Rosie actually stepped in front of their 2-year-old son when the snake slithered under the fence, so they actually believe that she saved their toddler's life. Now, Dad Shane Lewis says if they'd known that their regular vet didn't have snake anti-venom, then they'd have gone straight to the emergency centre and likely saved their little girl's life. So that's what they want everyone else to do.
Absolutely, and it's a good message, isn't it? If you do have an emergency, phone ahead. Just make sure, because then your vet can say, look, we don't have that, you need to go to.
Or they can have everything laid out and be prepared and make it happen super fast.
Absolutely.
And lastly, something decidedly different from the other stories. From Leicester in England, where a love-struck bulldog had to be freed by fire crews after she got her head stuck in a cat door while chasing down a potential mate.
This is one of your kind of favourite stories.
It is, and I always come up with true stories. We know what happens with doggies when they're feeling in the mood. Now, according to Keita's dad, the 5-year-old American bulldog bitch, who was in season, spotted a male dog through the window and tried to escape and meet her beau. Alas, her head got through the cat door, but her body didn't. Desperate to find love, Keita ripped out the surrounding panel, but the frame got stuck around her head. Meantime, her would-be boyfriend, believed to be a smaller terrier, spotted the gap in the door and took advantage of the moment to sneak inside. Kita's dad heard the commotion, rushed into the kitchen, which prompted the smaller dog to run away. Firefighters took 20 minutes to get the plastic panel off Kita's head, and it's going to take a little bit longer and a visit to the vet to find out whether love did find a way.
I don't really want to go there, actually, but anyway. Okay.
It's a KB special. That's our news wrap-up for this week.
Thanks, KB. And if you've got any news stories you'd like to let us know about,
especially
please,
like that.
Especially like that. Kay likes those sort of weird and kind of crazy things. We'll be posting regular news updates on our blog. And like all our stories, if there is some general information in there that's valuable for pet owners, we'll always put it up on our blog. So for our heatwave and bushfire tips, etc., just go to VETtalktv.com or VETtalkradio.com.au and click on blog, and you'll be able to see some of those updates there.
And plus we'll add some stuff from our archives about what to do for rabbits and guinea pigs and all those other kind of animals as well.
Certainly will, because there's plenty of those out there.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we have time for this week. Thanks for joining us again. Don't forget we are available in the iTunes store absolutely free, or you can just go to VETtalkradio.com.au and play us right there, or you can even just download it if you want. Entirely up to you. We've made it easy for people.
Well, we're not free, but the podcast is.
Never free, always reasonable.
I'm Kaye Browne.
I'm Brian Pickering. See you next week.
Bye.